Hello dear viewer, and welcome back to the Lunar Nebula Art Channel with me, Jalanon. So this is our final turtle here. We're going to turn this Raphael into a Donatello. So my current thinking is I want a similar posture of the body as Raphael. So I'm going to just change some things up, shift some colors around, figure out how to make some water. And the way I did this, I did just the pen tool, and then I expanded the stroke, and then we place things inside that stroke. But I do really like turning down the opacity, or even turning off a layer, and then being able to select the nodes with the node tool afterwards to stretch it to the shape I like. As you saw right there, I was able to change kind of that solid round shape into more of a little hook. So I think that kind of makes that more of an action-oriented water, you could say. But yeah, I'm just trying to copy that kind of style with the opaque colors that the animation uses. And I will continue to do that. I do think about it in the future as well. Like, do I want this to be opaque, or do I want it to be transparent so we can see Donatello's staff better and his hand? But that's for later. For now, I'm just trying to mess with like stroke widths. You can see the crazy amount of nodes I'm dealing with up there to try to make the stroke look interesting and not just draw it by hand. And as you can see, I then decide, you know what, instead of doing that, let's expand the stroke, and then we'll take chunks out of it with circles so that we can have that nice kind of circular elliptical cutout. So what you do there is just add those shapes on top of another shape, and then you go to subtract. And that's how I get these kind of nice little cutoffs. So you kind of have to imagine that this shape that is going to be is basically the shape that is where the circles aren't, right? So yeah, and then I mess with that a little bit, make it a little more jagged in some areas, make it a little sharper when I can. But I think that looked pretty wavy as a design, so I liked that. And I think, yeah, using the circles really did work better. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Other than that, we go to the highlights next. I do kind of want the highlights to follow with the shape of the water. And eventually, I'll be flipping this shape so that the highlight should be kind of coming from Raphael's fire off in the distance, in theory. If this was more of an illustration than just copying the animation style, I'd be focusing more on trying to make sure that the colors made sense and all that. But since it's more of an animation, you don't necessarily have a lot of painterly style with animation. You want to make sure you can get stuff made fast, furious, and awesome. You're more concerned with motion than with, I would say, colors and realism in animation. So yeah, and that's the style of copying. And as you can see here, we are trying to increase the miter and make that join where that node is at the proper angle for it to become sharp, so that it'll look cool and not like a weird round shape there. But yeah, I think we decided to go with the round shape at the end. I do spend a long time on this water because it's important to me. And Guitar. And Donatello. But yeah, eventually we will get this how we want. I kind of just wanted a little bit of it peeking out, so we could have just another color shape in there. But yeah, I'd say animation is more about shapes and the flow of a design with easily readable color, I guess. So that's what we're going for. And as you can see, I'm trying to do that cool cutout thing again. And we'll see if we like it or not. But for now, yeah, and then I also expand the stroke, I think. Yep. That's why it turned into all these nodes that we can then mess with as we desire. And sometimes that's just what you gotta do, is expand that stroke, make it its own shape. And that seems to work pretty well for this water. Right now, I believe we're watching this at 8 times speed. So, yeah. Now off to the side here are just some little water droplets that fell off the main body of water, which you can see in Katara's pose as well. And then yeah, we just move it into the picture. Oh yeah. And what I'm trying to do with the shape of the water is kind of bring the visual of that contrasted highlight of water with the symbol of water. The person's eye should follow that down to Donatello, and then hopefully Donatello's stance and the way the ribbons work and everything will push the viewer's eye towards the rest of the turtles, who will then hopefully lead the reader's eye down that line towards the right. So that's the idea, is from left to right here. And then I'm trying to figure out kind of what expression is Donatello going to make when he can waterbend. And I was thinking, you know, he's the curious science person. So yes, he would be like, oh, this is cool. So that's what I go with. I'm trying to copy that tongue shape and color a bit. And then of course, we don't want him to look angry. Raphael, we were trying to make it look angry, because Raphael's pretty much always angry. Whereas Donatello is more like, ooh. So yes, we change these kind of eyebrow ridges up. And we make them a lot softer. That way it's a lot less aggressive looking, more kind, more approachable. That sort of thing. And then I try to do a thing where I just duplicate that shape, so then I can do a stroke around it. And then I realized I can pull the strokes down to be a 0. So if I mess with this enough, then in theory, I can have 2 separate stroke lines around the one shape I want. So that's how I form the lips here. And I think that worked pretty well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like if you're enjoying this video. Subscribe for more videos like this, dear viewer. And yeah, that's my spiel. Unless you'd rather I say, like, comment, share, and subscribe. But yeah. Anyway, here we go with Leonardo's eyes. I believe that is the style I will go with for the foreseeable future. After this video, I want to try to go back and make sure the whole styles work together. We're going to mess with some details here, because my thumbnail, I realized I had a cool texture I could use for the background, and I don't have it in this yet. So yeah, there will be a 5th video in this series where I try to bring everything together and look at all the details that I may have missed and make them work better. So yeah, we're making Donatello all purple. Purple, purple, purple. That's what his eyes looked like in some of the other cartoons, so I went with that. Purple, purple, purple. And yeah, we did use a darker purple for the stroke outside the iris. Other than that, it's pretty easy asset reuse for this point of the piece. So we just move things around, try to get things the right size and shape. I'll definitely have to thicken up some of the other turtles like Michelangelo and Raphael, I think, because I like Leo's style for the rest of the picture. So I'm going to go back, fix all that next time. Yeah, right here I'm trying to figure out where would his head be. Like, he's going to be looking up at this water, obviously. So I need to reposition the neck and the head. Make it look like he's kind of leaning forward a little bit to get a closer look, but also mostly looking upwards. So that's a little bit of subtlety there. And then we gotta make these legs in a better position, you know, because he's not kicking anything right now. And yeah, we will get rid of some stuff as well. And yeah, I'm going to definitely change the shading on Raphael and Michelangelo in the near future. But Michelangelo's already looks pretty much like what we want, so that shouldn't take too long, in theory. But Leonardo's arms over here seem to be the better asset, I would say, in terms of where to place things, how I want the arms to be shaped. So I'm just moving those around, and then we'll tweak those later. And as you can see, I decided to turn down the opacity so we can see through the water and really see what Donatello's hand is up to in terms of wielding a weapon or just, you know, casually waterbending like a master, because it's Donatello. But yeah. Other than that, I'm also debating what kind of costume pieces from the Avatar crew I want, and I decide this necklace from Sokka seems kind of interesting. It's a little bit off-center, where it's kind of like, I don't know, it feels kind of like a tooth, except not, or a blunted tooth or something. So I try to go with those shapes, where it's kind of that trapezoid. And yeah, we're just gonna do all this stuff, get the shapes kind of how I want, and then I eventually decide, if I am correct on the timing of this, to add them together. But right now we gotta move that shoulder behind some stuff, or just delete it, whatever works. Yeah, we want that shoulder right around there. We'll move it around, we'll do some more stuff. And I'm thinking Leo's arm might be a little too beefy for Donatello. But also, as you can see, I'm trying to maneuver the forearm and it's not quite working. So I decide to just duplicate. And then I can turn them into two separate shapes. One as the forearm, one as a boomerang. Yay. Holding a boomerang, I should say. Well, yeah. Yep. So far, so good. So we've got all that. And I realize, I may have forgotten the piece of where I made the boomerang. I thought I recorded that, but, yep. Mistakes may have been made. But basically, I went to Sokka's little boomerang hand and copied the boomerang from that. And so on and so forth. We got some little holes in there. And as you can see, we spend quite a bit of time on this forearm trying to get it out, because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to connect it to the arm and the hand correctly because of the position of the boomerang. I liked the position of the boomerang, so from there is where I built out the hand and the arm. And I think that's a good way to do things when you have props. If you can't quite figure out how somebody's going to be holding something, maybe just figure out where the something is first and then figure out how they'd hold on to it. Sometimes that's helpful. And I think that helped a lot for this piece. So we delete all the unnecessary stuff. And then we move this thing around. We're trying to make it look like it's going around the arm and behind the forearm. So we can do that, even with those broken pieces of nodes on the forearm. We just gotta make sure we move it out of the forearm so that the forearm isn't covering it weirdly. So yeah. And then from there, we take another look at everything. We got the bow staff, which I feel like I also forgot to get that part of the recording up. Well, basically I went to the cartoon version of Donatello, did an expanded stroke on a pen tool, and then I did one thing of pen tool stuff for the wrapping, and then I expanded that out, then duplicated that, flipped it over, put it for the bottom, and then behind that I actually put that darker version of it to try to be kind of like shadows. And then yeah, I think I had the highlights and did the same thing with that, and just expanded the stroke and maneuvered as necessary to try to make the highlight on top of the straps. So that's kind of how I did the bow staff. Sorry I didn't have that on this recording. I was sure I recorded that. Maybe I mislabeled one of the things and forgot to put it in. Mistakes were made. Well, on the bright side, hey, you can see that I decided to make kind of a mitten. I went with Sokka's mitten and forearm wrappings. And from here, I'm working on the thumb, trying to figure out, okay, how to make this look right. Eventually, I realized I need to pull this mitten in. So, we do that a bit. And then, ta-da. Gotta get that wrist looking better. And right here, I am trying to have the lines shaped so that they're bowed upwards a bit, because we're kind of looking up at this point. I'm really not an expert on this, but I believe the idea is the horizon line is where horizontal lines are perfectly horizontal. If you look at anything above the horizon, then they should kind of bow upwards. And then if you're looking at things below the horizon, horizontal lines will be bowed downwards. So that was the idea behind the wrappings right there. And yeah, here I'm trying to get the thumb to work. And then I'm like, you know what? When you zoom out, you can barely tell. So I got it as good as I could and then zoomed out and made sure it still looked okay. But yeah, and go back to here, fiddle around with that forearm some more. So here with the wrappings, I'm going to kind of change the direction of them a bit. Yeah, we're going to mess with that hand. I'm going to break that so the thumb looks less like it's a separate piece of the body and that it's part of the mitten. Yeah, and there I'm changing the orientation a bit, trying to flatten out those lines. And then I pull it out. And then I realize we need to move the lines too. So we'll do that because there should be only 4 of those wrist wrappings showing. 4 wraps, I guess you could say, or 4 layers of it. So, trying to figure out how that would work with the arm coming out at you. I then reverse course on those. And yeah. And technically, I believe the ones further back would look closer together, which is why I pushed them like that, so that the thickest piece of the wrap is actually at the wrist there. But yeah. And with that, I've kind of realized how squat that arm looks. Try to figure out a quick fix. I realize there's not much of a quick fix I can do. So then I kind of just give up on that. But I think I'll go back and try to fix that in the next episode. And then we just try to get all the shadows to our liking. And here I'm remembering the patella of the knee would be raised. So most likely that portion of the knee would have a lot of light on it from Raphael's fire. And then here I go with the Leonardo foot, where it's just the bottom of the foot really has shadow. And we got that from Toph, so that should be pretty similar to the Avatar style. I'm going with it. And here I'm just kind of thinking, okay, which part of the foot has the darkest portion? It'd be underneath the middle of the foot right there. The arch, I should say. So yeah, then we just reshape the foot a bit. I probably should change that calf a little bit, make it a bit straighter. The next episode, I suppose. But yeah, so we take these shadows, and once again, we just make them the way we want. So we've got all that. Perfect. And then we do the foot, or the toes, and then the foot. Okay, so we've got some nice little shading here, making it look a little more alive. And of course we got the knee pad, and I just flip that over and make it bigger. And that fits pretty much perfectly, so I barely have to mess with that. And then we just flip that shadow, and we make it look slightly different, so it's not the same. And there we go. We're just kind of taking a look at things, making sure it's all working. I move the shadow, try to put it a little bit under the bow staff and the arm that's raised up, and then try to extend that away because of the fire. And so far so good, I think. So far so good. And then at the end of this, I should be taking another look at the water symbol, because at least on my screen, the way I'm looking at things, we change it a bit. But first, we're adding more shadows. And here, I decided to be a little bit lazy and see if that'll work with just making this a multiply layer. And lo and behold, it seems to work pretty well. So I'm glad I did that first, because that was a quick and easy way to see if a multiply or darken layer would just do the job. And it did. And so we make shading a little bit faster with that, which is glorious. And then, yeah, I try to get the bow staff shadow, and then I duplicate the thumb and turn that into a shadow with another multiply layer, I believe. Yep. And then it turns out all this hard work will be eventually just obscured by the water, but it's worth keeping in mind for the future and stuff. And yeah, I do another shadow on the bow staff underneath the fingers. And here we go. Boop. And then I realized I don't quite like the look of that. So then I just go to black and turn down the opacity. And that also works decently well, because in animation, they want to make faster shadows as well. So there we go. We got the water back. It's opaque, not transparent, which means we can't see through it. So I kind of mess with that a little bit, seeing if I can, because it's like, I worked on that hand and that bow staff. But oh well. No one will know unless they watch this video. So yeah. Other than that, we just kind of take another look at things, try to reevaluate anything off. So this is where I decide, yeah, I'll duplicate the background circle, try to clip everything in there, see if that fixes it. And then I remember, oh yeah, it wasn't that. It's the fact that I changed the stroke on the original ellipse. And so I just have to reset the pressure on that so that they're all normal, and then we gotta get the right sizing of the stroke. And yeah, I do like that better. I still like the waves feeling like they're kind of more painted, so I kept the stroke pressure variable on that one. But the outside circle I liked having just as a straight stroke without much variation. And then I flip the shading here, and I realize I can probably just rasterize this arm and turn it into another multiply layer. And so that's what I do, because zoomed out it looks fine. Zooming in, the rasterization, it looks kind of weird. But when you zoom out, it does look fine. So I decided to keep it like that. And then we just put some more shading on the shells. Gotta get them in the proper layers, clipped in there. All safe and secure. And then I think the peck would be probably out enough that the firelight would catch it, or the reflected light from the water. So that's what we did for Donatello.